that's a different one to that. So that is that, and so that reverse brass rubbing is what's recorded by the door. Okay, so that's a palimpsest brass. I think that's about it from around here. The slab must have been moved when they built this onto there, but it's an interesting slab. There are two people in it, or a lot of people in it rather. The rector of the parish was then called Thomas Fuller, and he was at college with Pepys, Samuel Pepys, and he does appear in Pepys' diaries. There are two Fullers in Pepys' diaries. He's not the admirable Dr. Fuller, but he is Dr. Fuller, he was very good at telling ghost stories. He was very clever, and he was a prevaricator, which was someone who had to prepare a very complicated lecture, humorously as well, and deliver it in Latin, and that was Reverend Fuller was one of those. Pepys went to hear him in a church and said he preached neatly. So there's a connection with Pepys there. Dr. Fuller's daughter married a man called Clopton Havers. Clopton Havers was a pathologist, and he was the first person to describe this minute structure of solid bone in any literature, and it is called to this day the Haversian systems. And here we have Gray's Anatomy, and can't do better than Gray's Anatomy, with the picture of the Haversian system to substantiate the fact that Clopton Havers, it's named after him, who's buried there. All his children died, and it's an interesting tombstone. It's not easy to read, but I will read it out. Does this strike you as odd? This is one of his children. Elizabeth was born on October the 22nd, 1692, and she died on March the 24th, 1692. Right? And you know why? No? The calendar in the old days used to start on Lady Day on the 25th of March. So 25th of March. So had that child lived one more day, she would have then died in 1693. So it was changed that in there. So it's quite fun to give the children something to do. She died before she was born. Which I think is the end of my tour. Unless you sent me this in. Mr. Kinsey did the Willingale crucifixion. You can pick out a sort of cross in white, and then the fields around it represent the 4 seasons of the year. I think the top right hand is rape, and the rest are to represent the 4 seasons of the year. There are so many regulations with running churches nowadays, you won't believe it. We get mixed up with health and safety. I hope you noticed we have the no smoking notice outside. We've been received another email this week that, is it Brentwood, the next borough? They're actually saying they will sue the churches if they haven't put the notice up. Yeah, but we originally had a notice to say, you're supposed to put them up, but really, we think it's a bit hilarious. So I said, oh, well, let's do it, stick it up there anyway. But I got an email this week from the Rural Dean to say that the next borough is definitely threatening to sue judges. Anyway, the one you're on about is, one of our regulations is every year we have to test the gravestones in the churchyard to see if they're safe. And they actually have invented a machine called the tumble tester, which you bring along and put on your gravestones and put them on, but they don't recommend it. What we actually have to do, and I've been caught doing this, is the gravestone is there. You have to kneel down before each gravestone and then pull yourself up by the gravestone. If it falls on top of you, it's not safe. I was caught when I died for the right child.
What happens to them if they're not safe? They have to be laid flat, do they?
Yeah, we've laid 1 or 2 flat.
Rejoice underneath it.
We've got about 3 that aren't really safe, but somebody's supposed to be mending them for us. But on the whole, if they're the big crosses, it's better really, I think, to lie them down because, you know, the mortar, we've had some mortared, but again, I'm not sure. I think they probably weren't done with lime mortar because you really need lime to leave the room. Like some of the others.
Is that once a year you do that?
We have to put a report in once a year that we've tested all gravestones. All lots.
Got any particularly old or interesting grave in the graveyard? What's the oldest?
Not specifically. And that large one that's standing up there, you know, the very big one, that nearly all those around it are the, there you are, I'm getting old now, I've forgotten the name now. Luckings, they're all Luckings. And that one is, I did a project on that one because you could only really read Caroline on it, and I was sort of wonder who it was. And it was actually put up there in memory of one of the Luckings from Shellow Hall, But I don't know much about him, except that he had intractable pain because they put an obit in the paper saying that he had spent his 12 years in pain. It didn't tell me what, I can't find out what. And Caroline was his wife. They married late in life, and she remarried later and went to live at Writtle. But none of the others. There's one over there where we started. There's a cross which is to the man who fell out of the tree and was killed on that spot. That one was where we started, yeah, but not otherwise. Now, you wanted me to do a little, 2 minutes? What I know about the coach house, which isn't very much. Shall I do it now? All I know is that Aylitz, which is what is called Aylitz now, was built before 1684 by a man called George Steeland, and it was built as a pub called the Green Man. It was sold in 1684, so we know that it was built before that, and it was sold to a man called Godsave of Beecham Roding. At some time along the line, it ran as an inn quite late. The coaches, I've always understood, came down this side of Aylitz, went through and out the other side. And the coach house was a coach house for the inn. At some time, the Reverend Colvin bought it or acquired an interest in it, and it was used as a men's club for many, many years. George Neal, for example, has played many hands of cards and so forth in there. And then later on, the Clemensons acquired it, and they gave it to the church in 1932 with that piece of land. I think it was when they upgraded Aylitz and made that into almshouses, so to speak, and they gave that piece of land to the church with the coach house. And that's all I know about it.
How old is Aylitz?
That's the same. Oh, it's built, you see, that was built at the same time.
And was that the inn or was the coach house?
As an inn. No, the
coach house.
Aylitz was the inn.
Oh, right.
And later on it became a shop. If you stand outside Aylitz, you can see that the middle of it has got an appearance of a shop. It's got the two, and it had a very deep cellar. Until recent years it had a cellar. But I don't know any more about it, I'm afraid. I know that the goodwill from it was sold eventually in the 1880s, I think, and the man from the Bell bought the goodwill so that nobody else could use the name. I don't know any more about that.
For these two churches, which were the rectories?
Willingale Durham
is
is
the
that
big
one,
yes.
and Willingale Spain is this one down there.
Jane Clemenson's house?
Yes, and that replaced the one which was actually where Seattle is now, by that pond, you know, within the...
Yes. On the garden.
Which is how I'm going on a bit, how I date our maltings, because when the Reverend Kello came there, the terrier says that he owned a house and some glebe, and I think a brew house. Anyway, he went on in 1614, and when the next man came, the next man had got a maltings. So I reckon the Reverend Kello, being a Scotsman, built the maltings, which is, you know, the 6 houses where I live.
Oh, right.
So that's all, yeah.
The book club have been reading a book this month called Workhouses in Essex,
Oh,
and it
it's
mentions
wonderful, isn't it?
yes, and it mentions that there was a workhouse in Willingale.
I know, and I cannot place it.
Oh, you can't?
I have tried every way to find that.
I thought it could have been your house because of the way it was built. But
Oh no,
it's obviously not.
the odd bit on mine is Victorian.
Oh, right.
If you look at it, you come along 6 houses and then the other bit goes the other way. That's Victoria. Yeah, so I think that is it now, isn't it? Stop now.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.